Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show for Wednesday, October the 28th, 2020. So let's start with Twitter. I noticed something strange last night, passing strange. Now, Tucker Carlson interviewed Tony Bobulinsky last night, and for the first time ever, he devoted his entire 1 hour show to a single interview. Now, keep in mind that this month, Tucker Carlson has set a record for the most viewers ever to watch a cable news show. A big deal, one might think. Well, not according to Twitter, that several people reported that Tucker Carlson was not trending. And I thought, that's odd, because I looked at what was trending on my page, and not only was Tucker Carlson trending, but Tony Bobulinsky was trending as well. So it would appear this suppression of the trend was for the United States only. Apparently, there's certain things that people in other countries are going to be pointed to, are going to be alerted to the fact that a great many other people find this interesting. But in the United States, no, the lid must be kept down, lest people get bad ideas. Yes, I took a screenshot of this. So I got up this morning and I thought, okay, is this going to be on Drudge? Nope. Not a single reference to this, not a reference to Tucker Carlson, not a reference to Tony Bobulinsky, not a reference to the Biden family in China. Again, passing strange. Well, the fix is in. Hope it was worth it, Matt. The rumor, which is now several months old, is that Matt Drudge has sold the Drudge Report for an undisclosed amount of money, and he signed a non-disclosure agreement that he would not reveal that he had sold the site. I was unsure about this, but now I am persuaded that it is true for the reason that this Bobulinsky story is truly a bombshell. We have pretty strong evidence that the Vice President of the United States and now the Democratic candidate for president was selling out his own country for Chinese money. And then he's been lying about it repeatedly. But again, this is in the category of things that we really shouldn't know about. None of our business, apparently. Yes, I was alerted to this a few hours ago. Twitter sent out a message. Election results might be delayed. With the increase in voting by mail, there might be a delay in the announcement of election results. This means you could encounter unconfirmed claims that a candidate has won their race. Find out more, and then learn how voting by mail is safe and secure. Again, Twitter claims that it is not a publisher, it is merely a platform, but clearly it has become a publisher. Now, let's see. Unconfirmed claims that a candidate has won their race. Now, that fellow at the Hill talked a couple of days ago about how no, it's weeks until Americans know and the rest of the world knows who is actually certified as the winner of the presidential election. Yes, and that's avoiding the lie direct. I suppose in 1964 or in, say, 1984, Twitter, if it existed then, would block any claims that Lyndon Johnson had won the election or that Ronald Reagan had won the election, both famous blowouts, because the results are not officially certified for some weeks after Election Day. Is that really the route they are going to go down? Are they really going to try to pull this off? And the Drudge Report. The Drudge Report has become positively apocalyptic in the last few weeks. We know that Drudge likes death and disaster, and there's been plenty of that about. Let's look at the headlines. The chief headline: Wall Street spooked by virus, down 943 points. Hospitalization surge, Fauci, worse and worse. Oh dear, oh dear. I used to write about the stock market, and I was forced to follow the convention whereby, the Dow Jones or the S&P 500 are down or up X for the week. And this is the result of something that's made up. Oh, I see. Hospitalizations are increasing. Cases are up. So I have 500 shares of Apple, so I'm going to sell those today. That's not how it works, particularly since most of the trading, the overwhelming amount of trading on Wall Street now is done by robots, by algorithms. But what else does Drudge have for us? MAGA left out in cold, hundreds stranded at freezing airfields, several hospitalized for hypothermia. Cook, Joe's path to 270 widens. Texas moves to toss-up. If Biden is ahead, as much ahead in the polls as Drudge has been telling us, then why would he even be thinking about 270? Wouldn't he be thinking more like, 400, 450? Dems see signs of hidden voters flipping. Poll, Biden plus 17 in Wisconsin. Takes slim lead in Georgia. Colorado, biggest blue in 80 years. What if state can't agree which candidate won? But it's supposed to be a Biden blowout. Media election planners prepare for night of mystery. Again, why would they be preparing for a night of mystery if it's going to be a blowout? New voters surge to the polls. White House COVID testing expert warns of draconian measures ahead. Haven't there already been draconian measures extensively in the United States? Task force warns of unrelenting broad community spread. If most people aren't getting sick, if the overwhelming majority of people aren't getting sick, how is this a particular problem? But never mind that. Virus claiming more lives than data indicates. And I will get to that shortly. This is from The Federalist by Jordan Davidson. Oh, and I'm looking at a picture of Jack Dorsey, the founder and CEO of Twitter. And I've been joking for the last couple of weeks that he looks like the sort of man who would sidle up to you on the sidewalk and ask if he could buy a cigarette from you despite his billions. Now he has gone full Karamazov. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey lied to Congress on Tuesday during a Senate hearing focused on big tech's content moderation policies when he claimed that his social media company has never censored President Donald Trump. Just to be clear, we have not censored the president, Dorsey said in response to Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. We have not taken the tweets down that you're referencing. We have added context with a label, and we do the same for leaders around the world. Blackburn said Twitter has censored Trump and his campaign tweets and accounts at least 65 times, but never once censored Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. Dorsey maintained the company did nothing wrong by labeling the president's tweets and adding more context to his statements. We have not censored the U.S. president, Dorsey echoed. We do not take down the tweets, but we add context around it. Despite Dorsey's false claims, there are numerous examples of Twitter censoring Trump and even taking down his posts. Earlier in the year, Twitter removed access to an obviously fake racist baby video posted by the president after creating a platform-sponsored fact check in the trending topics section of the website. Twitter censored multiple Trump tweets raising valid concerns over mail-in voting and flagged Trump's tweets about sending the National Guard to cities with violent rioting as glorifying violence. Trump's tweets likened coronavirus to the flu were also hidden by the big tech company. In addition to their censorship of Trump, Blackburn also noted that despite Twitter's reported commitment to adding more context to world leaders' posts, Twitter has not taken action against the Iranian Ayatollah Khamenei. You said Holocaust denial and threats of Jewish genocide by Iran's terrorist Ayatollah do not violate Twitter rules, and it's important for Iran's leaders, like their terrorist leader, to have a platform on Twitter, Blackburn said. You have testified you were worried about election interference. That is something we are all worried about. For about 100 years, foreign sources have been trying to influence U.S. policy and U.S. elections. Now they are on your platforms. They see this as a way to get access to the American people. And another story from the Federalist, and another picture of Jack Karamazov, and which is flanked by a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, who is looking more like a replicant than ever. I'd like to see him at the, I always imagine him at the beginning of Blade Runner, given that test, the name of which escapes me, perhaps one of the something Kampf test. Perhaps someone in the chat can remind me. Again, from Jordan Davidson, in Wednesday's Senate hearing on big tech and Section 230, both Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that neither had any evidence that the New York Post's reporting on Joe Biden's knowledge of his son's Hunter Biden's foreign business deals is Russian disinformation. For both Mr. Zuckerberg and Dorsey, who censored the New York Post stories or throttled them back, do you have any evidence that the New York Post story is part of a Russian disinformation or that those emails are not authentic? Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin asked. Do you have any information whatsoever that they are not authentic or they are Russian disinformation? Both of them denied it. Within days of the story's censorship, the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, explicitly debunked the disinformation claims made by Representative Adam Schiff when he reported the intelligence community has no evidence that the bombshell story was a foreign attempt to spread misinformation and interfere in the U.S. election. To repeat, I really can't abide this phrase, intelligence community, because it means everything and nothing. If he wants to say the CIA or DNI or any of the other alphabet agencies, why doesn't he say so? Why would you censor it? Referring to the New York Post story, Johnson asked, why would you prevent that from being disseminated on your platform that is supposed to be for the free expression of ideas, and particularly true ideas? Now, Ted Cruz had something to say about Jack Dorsey. While I'm looking that up, I'll just say that, it's rumored. You remember that Twitter first became prominent during the Arab Spring, and people were hailing Twitter as a means by which those people in North Africa could rise up against their dictatorial leaders. And from the beginning, it has been rumored that there was CIA involvement in Twitter. And if there was or is a CIA involvement in Twitter, then its subsequent actions, particularly from 2015 onwards, would make a lot of sense. Ted Cruz said that Dorsey had flat out lied. Ted Cruz tweeted, here we go. Jack Dorsey of Twitter just told Senator Cruz that anyone could now share the New York Post's bombshell stories on Twitter. Dorsey is lying. Twitter is still blocking the URL for the New York Post story about the Biden's foreign corruption and China dealings. Cruz responded, what Jack Dorsey told the Senate under oath is false. I just tried to tweet the New York Post story alleging Biden's CCP corruption, still blocked. 18 USC 1621 makes it a felony to lie under oath to the Senate. See what's happening in the chat. Ooh, a sweater vest says and run. Actually, it's a sweater, a whole sweater. Head McNeck looking sharp. Why, thank you. Thank you, our valiant moderator. Says dashing ensemble KMG. I just thought that I would mix it up a bit. Jim Bowden, hi KMG, as always, my favorite stream, streaming from a Canadian morgue. Keep up the good work, mate. Your favorite Australian fan. Thank you. Not a morgue, says Tricky Woo, a funeral parlor. I believe I've explained this multiple times, but I'll explain it again. As you can see behind me, there is this riot of beige. So I thought that I would brighten it up somewhat. I'm getting ready for court, says Jim Bowden. KMG, you are inspiring. Getting ready for court. For what, I wonder? Jim Smith, Dorsey wearing an earring, no less. Doesn't he have a ring through his nose as well? I'm going to be talking about nose rings later in the show. Metatron says Dorsey looks like he smells like week-old bong water. Again, if I were a billionaire or even a millionaire, I would not go anywhere. I would not wear anything that was not either bespoke or came from some, Italian designer with a vowel at the end of his name. That's supposed to be one of the advantages of being rich, is it not? Dorsey looks like Dostoevsky from Brothers Karamazov. Not the good brother. Okay, maybe the father or one of the other brothers. I think it's due to Russian interference on elections, says Jim Bowden. Voight Kampf. Yes, that was the test in Blade Runner, says Hate Criminal. Thank you for that. Enron says, Kevin, can you tell us again why you think the Dems and the media won't be able to steal this for Biden? Well, I don't believe that they're going to be able to get away with the harvested ballots just coming in and coming in and coming in and coming in because Amy Coney Barrett is on the Supreme Court now. The Supreme Court split 4-4 before she took her seat. So the Pennsylvania law, which allows them to count ballots received up to 3 days after Election Day, November 3rd, including those that are not postmarked. Yeah, I don't think that's going to fly. James Andrews says, Kevin, are you able to buy your Schwarzbach beer again now that you live in a more upmarket area? I remember you said a while back that you couldn't get served. No, it is not available. But there are other overproof beers from Germany and Holland that will do. I'd prefer to buy a local product. I gather the way it works is that these companies, they have to make deals with the stores, including the Liquor Control Board of British Columbia or whatever it's called. And I guess they're not aggressive enough. One would think that they would prefer to have local products on the shelves. But I noticed that even in beer stores, that the kind that have 100 different varieties of local IPAs, that I don't see Schwarzbach there as well. Longnard says, any chance of putting this chat out in podcast form? Yes, there is, and I was asked about that again today. I can convert this into a SoundCloud file, and I guess I'm up to 170 them. But I've been putting it off too long. Okay, let's get back to it here. This is from Frank Salvato at the National File. Tony Bobulinsky, a former business associate of the Bidens, went on the record Tuesday to explain the complexity of the Biden influence enterprise and why he believes the Bidens have been compromised by the communist Chinese. In an appearance on Tucker Carlson tonight, Bobulinsky explained why he believes a President Biden would be compromised or vulnerable to be controlled by the communist Chinese, citing questionable financial transactions. The former CEO of Sinohawk LLC, The company the Bidens set up with Yi Jianming, the former CEO of CEFC Energy, described the Biden family's relationships with CEFC and Burisma, the Chinese and Ukrainian energy companies, as questionable, and that Hunter Biden had received millions of dollars from both despite having zero evidence in the energy field. The most shocking statement of the interview came when Bobulinsky said the Communist Chinese government directly loaned the Biden family $5 million interest-free. Bobulinsky maintained that makes the Biden family compromised, meaning a President Biden would be vulnerable to being leveraged over sensitive roles, information, and/or opportunity. It's about the family. To them, it was always the Biden family, Bobulinsky said. It wasn't Hunter Biden, Jim Biden. It was the Biden family and led and operated by Joe Biden. And in that document that you guys have, and I think has been provided to the world, the Chinese referenced that because of their trust in the Biden family, that they were excited about moving forward. And in that document, they referenced loaning $5 million to the family, that is the Biden family. And notice they didn't say we are loaning that money to Tony. We are loaning that money to Bob Walker, and not a document generated by me, but documented and generated that they are loaning that money to the Biden family. Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden has maintained consistently that he had no knowledge or involvement in his son's business dealings. Bobulinsky fervently refuted this declaration for a third time in the interview. He described two meetings that he had with Joe Biden, which were set up because he was being tapped as the CEO of Sinohawk, the joint venture between the Bidens and Yi. Biden's former business associate said one of the other partners in Sinohawk, Rob Walker, clarified in a 2017 text message that Hunter Biden's use of the term "my chairman" in a text message about the business was a reference to his father. Later in the interview, Bobulinsky spoke of a conversation he had with Joe Biden's brother, James. Bobulinsky said he broached the subject of potential problems that an association with Yi and CEFC would create if Joe Biden would make a run for the presidency. According to Bobulinsky, James Biden responded by saying plausible deniability. Representative Doug Collins tweeted, "This should be front page news everywhere. Yet the mainstream media is turning a blind eye to this major revelation, and this is a very serious business." Because regardless of whether Trump wins or loses on Tuesday, there are going to be millions and perhaps tens of millions of Americans who are convinced that there is a conspiracy against their own country by leading members of the Democratic Party, the media, the deep state, and this is not good news. It is not good news at all. If Trump loses on Tuesday, a lot of these people are going to be furious, or worse than that. Back to the Bidens, back to the Biden family, or the Biden crime family, as they are sometimes called. Boy, Joe Biden sure loves those aviator frames, does he not? Vice President Foster Grant. John Dale Davidson writes in The Federalist, "It's hard to read Ann Applebaum's recent article on the Hunter Biden scandal at The Atlantic without guffawing out the outlandishness of her argument, which is that the whole thing amounts to a shadowy psyop that's too complicated to understand. A miasma conjured up by unreliable Fox News characters trying to create a foggy world in which misdeeds might have taken place and in which corruption might have happened." The same standards were not applied to the entirely fallacious Russiagate hoax. And where was the evidence of this? None. Zero. The reported evidence, were leaks, probably criminal, made to news reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post, and CNN and elsewhere, which were then reported by these media outlets, and which the so-called intelligence community then adduced as proof of Russiagate. Davidson continues, Applebaum's approach is emblematic of the mainstream media's collective refusal to cover the Hunter Biden story. She spends zero time discussing the actual facts that have come to light through the reporting of the New York Post and a handful of other news outlets, and instead opens her essay with a lengthy anecdote about herself that serves as an ad hominem attack on a reporter she dislikes. We are meant to understand that this reporter, Matthew Tiermand, is a creep, not a real journalist, and not to be trusted. For this reason, Applebaum tells us you can ignore the trove of emails Tiermand got from an erstwhile business partner of Hunter Biden's that implicates former Veep Joe Biden in foreign influence peddling schemes similar to those uncovered by the Post. I wonder if Matthew Tiermand is related to Leopold Tiermand, who decades ago was the editor of Chronicles. The idea is to disparage the source of the information rather than grapple with what the information reveals. This, of course, has been the media's posture toward the Post's reporting from the outset. Pay no mind to the laptop or the emails uniformly referred to as, quote, documents of questionable provenance, unquote. Yes, unlike the Steele dossier, because it all came from Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, and they aren't trustworthy. Real journalists, you see, only investigate and report on information that's verified and trustworthy, like the Steele dossier. Hence, Applebaum makes no mention of Tony Bobulinsky, Hunter's former business partner, who came forward last week claiming he met with Joe Biden about China, that Biden is indeed the big guy, referenced in an email about a proposed equity split in a deal with CEFC China Energy. She makes no mention of the text messages between Bobulinsky and James Gilliar, another Hunter associate, that clearly show the deal was an influence peddling scheme that relied on the Biden name. She makes no mention of a recent Senate report detailing millions of payments from CEFC to a company controlled by Hunter and James Biden, Joe's brother. All of this, writes Applebaum, is just noise. Smart people who live outside the Fox News bubble do not need to learn any of this stuff. It's all just a vague conspiracy theory meant to rile up the unwashed rubes. Pay it no mind. You might expect this from a writer whose latest book is about how she lost all her friends because they went crazy. A writer, that is, whose elite sense of European morality led her to the conclusion that Roger Scruton was a fascist for supporting Brexit, but the arrest of Roman Polanski for raping a drugged 13-year-old was, quote, outrageous, unquote. Yet Applebaum's aggressive incuriosity about the Hunter Biden story is typical of top writers and reporters at America's most prestigious outlets. As Matt Taibbi noted last week, the dogged refusal of the mainstream press to cover the story, together with Twitter and Facebook's decision to block access to the Post's reporting, might prove to be a bigger scandal than whatever Hunter and his dad were up to in China. Anne Applebaum, I know of her. Pretty much everything that she writes can be ascribed to ethnic animus. Full stop. She is furious with Donald Trump because Donald Trump wants peace. He is not a neocon. He does not want to bomb the whole world, and he especially does not want to get into a war with Russia. And let's get into the real sleaze here. This is from Joe Hoft at the Gateway Pundit. Text messages, videos, and pictures were recently discovered on Hunter Biden's laptop that put Hunter and the Biden family in very compromising situations. Perhaps the most disturbing revelations in the many files on the Hunter Biden laptop is the family's actions surrounding Hunter's inappropriate and possibly criminal behavior with a certain minor. Well, I know who that certain minor is, but I'm not going to mention that person's name. Former Beep Joe Biden claimed the controversy with Hunter Biden's laptop was created by Russia. Evidence shows this is not the case. Biden does not want you to believe your own eyes. Of course, Joe Biden is the one who is lying. On Monday, we shared 5 texts related to the Biden family's cover-up of Hunter's actions with a minor. The text messages involved Hunter Biden and his immediate family and a friend. The text messages confirmed that Joe Biden was looped in on Hunter's illegal activity with a certain minor and attempted to cover it up. Hunter Biden sent a text to a family friend where he shares that someone is accusing him of being sexually inappropriate around her daughter. This is why Hunter claims he is not allowed to be alone with that person. In another text message from Hunter to a family friend, Hunter shares that his mother, Jill Biden, propagates the claims that Hunter is sexually inappropriate around the children, and Veep Joe Biden is aware as well. And all of these messages are included in the story. In a third text message sent by Hunter Biden from his uncle Jim Biden, former Veep Joe Biden's brother, Uncle Jim shares that both he and Joe are upset with accusations of impropriety, but they don't believe them. Jim and Joe Biden want to discuss with Hunter so they can all get their stories straight. In an email to colleague and fellow board member on Burisma, the now felon Devin Archer, Hunter explains how he is not allowed to be around a certain person without his father, Joe, being there. And a fifth text message shows Hunter explaining to a certain person that her mom told Joe that she would call the police if Hunter tried to see that person. These texts paint a horrible picture of what is going on behind closed doors in the Biden family. Today, we have uncovered pictures that back up the texts above. As we reported above, Joe Biden told a reporter just 2 days ago that the controversy with his son was a hell of a lie. We now have proof that Hunter was exposing himself for naked selfies with a certain minor in the same room. The first picture, heavily redacted, shows Hunter taking a photo of himself, again fully exposed with a certain minor in the room on the bed. The second picture shows Hunter in bed. That certain minor is next to him in the bed in the photo. The Biden household has many secrets. Some secrets involved Hunter and a minor. Why was this hidden from the public or from the police? Was this because it would tarnish Joe's political image? Most important, is the child safe now? This is not Russian disinformation. It's coming from the Biden nuclear family. Let's go to the chat. Walrus Libertarian says the room needs a statue of the Virgin Mary. I don't have one. I don't know. I have a crucifix, but don't know whether that would be appropriate or not. Walrus Libertarian says you can convert it with an app on your phone. All right. Tweety Bird Matthew was on War Room today. Matthew Tiermand. Mike F., remember the old saying, the cover-up is worse than the crime. Now they're the cover-up. Well, I guess, what are we into now? The cover-up of the cover-up? NPR saying, you don't need to know this. It's trivial. We don't want to bother our listeners with this. But let's talk about the latest exciting developments in drag kids. Our listeners definitely want to know about that. It's from Steve Watson at Summit News. Biden is soft and weak and too scared to be president. Speaking in the key state of Wisconsin Tuesday, President Trump addressed the ongoing rioting and looting in Philadelphia, declaring that the city is being torn up by Biden-supporting radicals. After almost 100 people were arrested Monday night, the chaos continued Tuesday with widespread criminality and violence. Ian Miles Chung tweeted with a video, Walmart and other stores are being looted. The Pennsylvania National Guard is standing down. I will have more to say about the police in a general sense a little later. Steve Keeley of Fox 29 tweeted, as Philly police show up at the Walmart parking lot, looters drop the large screen TVs they were carrying and run from police, leaving the big televisions in big red boxes scattered in the parking lot. It's protests. And now we hear this word clashes. Destruction and looting are not words that one typically sees Philadelphia in the mainstream media. And, well, there's an obvious reason for that. Andy No has a video, BLM rioters in Philadelphia come prepared to loot with shopping bags. Paul Joseph Watson, he had a video of what was going on at the Foot Locker. Luke Rudkowski had tweeted, more looting unfolding right now in Philadelphia, and I have to ask, why is it always Foot Locker getting looted? I mean, having brand new sneakers isn't that important, and it definitely won't help anyone. Well, I suppose it depends on how you look at it. these beauty shops, the ones that share makeup and hair products or whatever, they seem to be particularly hard hit. And it's my understanding that, downtown and such, like, a lot of these stores are owned by Black people, but of course that doesn't matter to the looters. Addressing a large crowd of supporters, Trump proclaimed, "Biden stands with the rioters, and I stand with the heroes of law enforcement. And you know what? They can do their job very easily. Just let them do their job." He declared war on the cops, and it's not working out too well. Heroes of law enforcement, again, I will get back to that in a little while. Biden has not condemned the rioting, again bolstering Trump's claims that he and Kamala Harris are committed to defunding police and appointing anti-police prosecutors in Democratic strongholds. Philadelphia would be a good example of that. Okay. Oh, yes. Whistleblowers. We all love the whistleblowers, except for Tony Bobulinsky, who is, well, you don't need to know anything about that guy. I mean, it's not important, right? I don't know. He's disgruntled or something. By his own account, he is disgruntled because he found out that there was an attempt to involve him in actions that could be constituted as treasonous. This is from CNN. Apparently, it took two people to write this, Jake Tapper and Jeremy Herb, author of 2018 anonymous op-ed critical of Trump revealed. Yeah, and who might that be? Let's see. Yes, he wrote a book, which was written by Anonymous. It's Miles Taylor, he revealed in a statement to CNN on Wednesday. He was chief of staff to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. He wrote a lengthy statement explaining why he penned the 2018 op-ed, declaring he was part of the resistance inside the Trump administration working to thwart Trump's worst inclinations. Or how about his orders or his wishes? Taylor said he wanted to force Trump to respond to the charges he was leveling without the ability to attack the messenger. Specifically, Trump called the op-ed treasonous. Much has been made of the fact that these writings were published anonymously. That decision wasn't easy. I wrestled with it. I understand why some people consider it questionable to levy such serious charges against a sitting president under the cover of anonymity. But my reasoning was straightforward, and I stand by it. He just wasn't willing to put his name next to it. Oh, and let's bury the lead here. What paragraph is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Paragraph 5. Taylor joined CNN as a contributor in September 2020. He had previously denied he was anonymous. Asked in August by CNN's Anderson Cooper if he had written the op-ed in the book, Taylor said, "I wear a mask for two things, Anderson, Halloweens and pandemics, so no." Is he going to be fired by CNN? Well, Jeffrey Toobin hasn't been fired by CNN. I mean, what do you have to do to get fired at CNN? Apparently, slapping your junk on the table and masturbating at a Zoom conference with quite a few worthies of the journalism world and of the deep state is not enough to get you fired from CNN. Okay, so mayhem. Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News. A far-left group is vowing to make sure Trump leaves the White House after the election, even if he wins, with radicals preparing to storm and occupy D.C. The Shutdown D.C. group says it will be in the streets before the polls even close. Doesn't that sound like election intimidation? Doesn't this sound like they're announcing a conspiracy to commit electoral intimidation? But I guess, the police, FBI, not interested in that sort of thing. Trump will not leave office without mass mobilization and direct action. On election day, when you're done voting, doing election protection, or getting out the vote, come join us at Black Lives Matter Plaza, states the group's manifesto. We're inviting everybody who agrees with these organizing principles to work together to make this uprising happen. We're going to make sure Trump leaves. Quite how the group is going to make Trump leave the White House on Election Day is somewhat baffling, given that even if he loses, he doesn't have to officially leave office until next year. Well, there was already an attempt earlier this year to storm the White House. Yes, that's right. And the media didn't really seem to think that was much of a story either. Again, if I were a news editor and there was an attempt that was taking place that could be filmed of a group trying to storm the White House, I would keep running with that story. I would keep that up on the screen until it was over. The extremist group is planning to block highways, shut down ports, and occupy state capitals if Trump tries to steal the election, i.e. wins it, while also vowing to harass members of Congress at their homes. We'll meet them at the train station or the airports, or if they drive into town, we can meet them at their homes, states the groups. This is the announcement of a criminal conspiracy. Where's the FBI? Where is the Department of Justice here? You see the two-part psyop here. One, that Biden is going to win the election, more than Reagan did in 84, more than Johnson did in 64, more than FDR did in 1936. He's going to get 70% of the vote. He's going to win all of the states, maybe. So if the returns come in and it seems that Trump is winning or that he's won, well, obviously Trump has stolen the election. Watson says if a right-wing group had published such a manifesto, it would be nationally demonized as a domestic terrorist outfit and face immediate federal investigation. As it is, Shutdown DC's call to arms has received virtually no mainstream media attention whatsoever. So what kind of condition is it where criminal conspiracies such as this are ignored by law enforcement? Again, Angelo Codevilla has something to say about that, which I will get to in a little while. This is from Estela Morabito at The Federalist. 7 open leftist threats that political terror is coming to America, whether Trump wins or not. 1, a think tank guy should meet a firing squad. In a chilling Twitter incident, agitator Nils Gilman called for the execution of journalist and former Trump advisor Michael Anton. Gilman publicly stated on Twitter, Michael Anton is the Robert Brasillach of our time and deserves the same fate. Brasillach was a Nazi collaborator in France whose fate was execution by firing squad. Neither Gilman nor Twitter took down the tweet despite many protests, including a public letter of grave concern from the Claremont Institute, where Anton is a senior fellow. Oh, and this gets better. Gilman is head of the George Soros-funded Berggruen Institute and a co-founder of the TIP, the Transition Integrity Project, which wargamed the ouster of Trump from office regardless of whether he wins re-election. Anton's crime, in Gilman's mind, was publishing an article about Gilman's project in the American Mind titled The Coming Coup. Why is Gilman's September 21st death threat against Anton still up on Twitter an entire month later? Will it remain up after the election? Number 2, shoot the CEO for not being woke enough. Former Twitter CEO Dick Costolo objected to the company Coinbase's decision to ease up on forcing employees to engage in social justice agendas such as critical race theory. Costello accused Coinbase's CEO Brian Armstrong of being among the first me first capitalists who would be first lined up and shot in the revolution. Number 3, if Trump loses, his supporters remain an existential threat. Take a look at this August 1st Salon article, which argues that even if Biden wins, Trumpism will survive the election and continue to be an existential threat. Author Paul Rosenberg examines the arguments and writings by John Pfeffer and other anti-Trump pundits who believe there is a lot of work to be done to force the de-Trumpification of America. They compare Trump supporters to Nazis or the Baathists of Saddam Hussein's Iraq and describe America under Trump as a pathocracy. Robert Reich, you might remember him from the Clinton administration. You might remember him from being exceedingly short man. I tweeted, when this nightmare is over, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It would erase Trump's lies, comfort those who have been harmed by his hatefulness, and name every official, politician, executive, and media mogul whose greed and cowardice enabled this catastrophe. It's very amusing to me that someone who played such a central role in the Clinton administration would dare inveigh against greed and cowardice. Number 4, former MSNBC host Keith Olbermann recently ranted that everyone associated with Trump, including his enablers and supporters, must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society. He might seem a has-been, but has nearly 1 million Twitter followers. Olbermann referred to Trump supporters as maggots. Number 5, a supposed religious scholar and CNN contributor Reza Aslan announced on Twitter, a tweet still up as of October 22nd, that all Trump supporters, quote, must be eradicated from society, unquote, along with Trump, and that there is, quote, no longer any room for nuance, unquote. Aslan has nearly 300,000 followers. Number 6, the organized violence against guests at the Republican National Convention as they left the White House in August showed new levels of open hostility against the right. Most notably, the mob swarmed Senator Rand Paul and his wife, who were convinced they would have been severely injured or killed if there were no police presence. 7, plots to dox political opponents. A recently unveiled database called the Media Manipulation Casebook is described as a means of gathering personal information that exposes anonymous Trump supporters. NBC News reporter Brandy Rosny appears to use it to find addresses, property records, even Amazon wish lists that can be a gold mine about what a person reads, buys, and wants. There's no question about what they think of us. No question at all. And what they would do if they had the choice. As Sam Hyde famously said, they want you broke, dead, your kids raped and brainwashed, and they think it's funny. Oh, how much of what is going on in the world do we know about? How much of that is important in the world do we know about? I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but in recent years, I've come to the conclusion that there is the official record and then there is the real record. And the two are wildly divergent. I suppose, James Burnham, explained this when he talked to the Machiavellians about the formal meaning of statements and their real meanings. This is from Catherine Smith at American Greatness. Many American colleges and universities failed to disclose more than $6.5 billion in funding and resources from foreign sources, including China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, the Washington Free Beacon reports. U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos unveiled a report last week detailing the massive failure. She said the threat of improper foreign influence in higher education is real. Transparency in foreign funding of higher education is not just something I think is a good thing, it's the law. For too long, enforcement of that law was lax, but not anymore. The department investigated 12 universities: Case Western Reserve, Cornell, Fordham, Harvard, Georgetown, Rutgers, Stanford, Texas A&M, and Yale universities, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the universities of Maryland and Texas. These places have endowments of billions of dollars, typically. Harvard's endowment is over $30 billion or something? Why would they possibly need money from China or from the Gulf? How greedy are these places? What are they doing with this money? Oh, and let's talk about the media being suborned. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. The Economist magazine provided sympathetic coverage of a Chinese tech giant widely considered a national security risk without disclosing the publication's lucrative business relationship with the firm that spanned nearly a decade. Huawei Technologies commissioned the Economist's business consulting division to advance its policy agendas and deflect cybersecurity concerns raised by Western governments. The influential British magazine produced reports on a wide range of subjects, including a report on broadband access in the United Kingdom that Huawei credits to have influenced British policy. The publication has also run numerous Huawei advertisements, and its editors have co-hosted several global forums with the company, helping the tech firm boost its public image as it faced growing scrutiny from the developed world for its close ties with the Chinese government. Yeah, yesterday or the day before, I was talking about some human rights activists, part of the Canadian deep state, who was moaning about anti-China sentiment. No, it was this, this Asian activist who was always trotted out to excuse Islamic atrocities in Canada, and he's warning. Oh no, we can't say you can criticize China, but you have to do it in a certain way. Well, why? Why do we have to do it in a certain way? I don't understand that at all. Again, just how suborned are our governments by the People's Republic of China? Not just our governments, but our media, our elite. I'm not going to name names here, but there are certain people that I see who are prominent in the Canadian media who, let's say, they publish books. They publish books that no one is ever going to read. Now, why would these books be published in the first place? I'm not talking about self-publishing. I'm talking about, major publishers. Well, I come to the conclusion that someone else is being paid to publish these books. And when you have an author, prominent author in a prominent newspaper, say, oh, globalism is great, and all these people who oppose it are wicked. China, not a threat. China should be our partner. And all this talk against China is just conspiratorial nonsense. Let's go to J5 Killer. Let's see what he has to say. Jeff Flake, former senator from Arizona, has cut an ad for Joe Biden. J5 Killer responds, Flake looks like he's aged 20 years in the two since he's left the Senate. Trump has wrecked him. A retweet from Minnesota Jim. Let's put it on our common sense filter. All non-polling metrics say Trump wins. One set of polls indicate a very close popular vote contest while favoring Trump in the electoral. Another set of polls indicate Trump loses by a larger margin than McCain. One set of polls is BS. David Chapman retweeted, Biden isn't campaigning. He isn't talking to voters. Why would anyone expect Democrats to turn out is beyond me. Oh, and let's see. Dana Goldberg tweeted, is 1:30 p.m. too early to have wine? It is, isn't it? Okay. And Mary Trump, yes, that Mary Trump responded, this is rhetorical, right? Is it possible for a meme to actually conjure things into existence? The cool wine mom, the cool wine aunt, or the box wine mom, the box wine aunt. Did these really exist in any significant form before this became a meme? Did susceptible women see these memes and think, oh, well, apparently women are getting drunk in the middle of the afternoon. So if everyone else is doing it, I guess I should too. J5 Killer tweets, seriously, if you can't organize a decent October surprise, you've got no business being president, especially if you've got all the networks and newspapers on your side. Conclusion, Biden is an incompetent loser. Oh, and he takes another kick at Howard Feynman. Oh, what does Howard have to tell us? If Trump is unconsciously tapping into his, German heritage when he incessantly repeats that we are rounding the corner on COVID, in German, if you're dragging someone around the corner, die Ecke, you are killing them. He's unknowingly bleating the truth out on the trail. Is this peak Nazi from the media? Or could there ever be peak Nazi from the media? This fatuous turd, a J5 killer, says. And a retweet from Rogan O'Handley, friendly reminder that they wouldn't be censoring us this aggressively if the polls were right. Ed Asante had tweeted last week, look at the sky-high turnout in Harris County, Texas and Gwinnett, Georgia this week. Ignore data from early voting. It's irrelevant. And we'll end with a kick at Nate Silver. Rhetorical, of course. More broadly, he tweeted, polls suggest Biden's gains relative to Clinton are mostly about persuasion, i.e. flipping some Obama-Trump voters and Johnson third-party voters that she didn't get. They don't tend to suggest a more Democratic electorate than in 2016 by party ID, maybe a bit less in fact. And a J5 killer tweeted, the big Biden lead in the polls is about persuasion, LOLOLOL. Talk about building your house upon the sand. What are the chances that these persuaded people don't stay persuaded by election day? But as the media keeps informing us, apparently by election day, 105% of the eligible voters will have already voted in advance. The Philadelphia Police Department urges all residents in the 12, 16, 18, 19, 24, 25th, and 26th districts remain indoors, except when necessary. These areas are experiencing demonstrations that have turned violent with looting. And John Hawkwood comments, Biden campaign is enthusiastically door knocking. Oh, things that we're not allowed to know. From Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News. A security guard who was alerted to the suspicious behavior of Manchester Arena suicide bomber Salman Abedi 6 minutes before the terrorist blew himself up, says he didn't report Abedi for fear of being branded racist. If we are not allowed to criticize newcomers to our country for any reason, or report suspicious activity, because this would be racist, and racism is the worst thing in the world, this strongly suggests that we don't take in any immigrants, because these people are, well, from the get-go, they're superior to us. This may sound crazy, but until about 2 generations ago, immigrants were expected to keep their nose clean and their heads down. They were expected to try and ingratiate themselves with their new societies, and they made a point, often to a boring extent, of explaining just how much they loved their new country. As has been pointed out by Martin Peretz, former editor of The New Republic, immigrants are telling you by their action that there was something profoundly lacking in the country from which they came. Otherwise, they would not have left, because immigration is a profoundly alienating act. Oh, how about some news? How about some cheery news from Britain? Well, from England especially, specifically. Christmas. It would appear that Christmas is going to be canceled in the West because our elites and our media have gone stark raving mad. This is from Callum Adams and Daniel Fago in the London Telegraph. Christmas family celebrations are liable to be broken up if they contravene coronavirus restrictions. Police chiefs have warned. David Jameson, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, said his force would investigate reports of rule breaking over Christmas if the region remained under Tier 2 restrictions, and officers would, if necessary, enter homes and separate households. Quote, if we think there's large groups of people gathering where they shouldn't be, then police will have to intervene. If, again, there's flagrant breaking of the rules, then the police would have to enforce. It's not the police's job to stop people enjoying their Christmas. Oh, really? However, we are there to enforce the rules that the government makes, and if the government makes those rules, then the government has to explain that to the public. The police are there to enforce it and keep people safe. They're not there to make judgments about whether people should enjoy themselves or not. Concluding that Christmas was going to be very difficult, Jameson said, remember that you've got Eid and Diwali as well. Yes, of course. Yes. Eid and Diwali are right up there with Christmas in terms of celebrations in England. Is that what we're supposed to believe? In which there are similar expectations from families to be mingling together closely, just as for Christmas. Yes, and I'd like to see the West Midland Police attempt to break up Muslim festivities. I just got a feeling that that is less likely to happen than them breaking up Christmas festivities. Let's see, Northern Lass, freedom fighter, tweets, lots of concerned uniformed thugs will be breaking up family meals on Christmas Day after comments from the West Midland Police. Police in England do not have legal powers of entry into your home to enforce corona restrictions unless you invite them in first. Yes, Britons never, never, never shall be slaves. That's from Rule Britannia. And coincidentally, the words to Rule Britannia, as well as the words to Land of Hope and Glory, were not allowed to be sung this year at the last night of the proms. You think that's a coincidence? I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't know. I don't believe that there's no such thing as coincidences. But, you know, as Ian Fleming famously wrote, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Yes, this is, we live in a world run by latrine wallahs now, and the government has handed over its powers to them so they can make the unpopular decisions. And of course, they don't have to justify them because we're scientists. After BBC journalist Victoria Derbyshire said she would break the rules to see her family at Christmas, she was forced to recant and apologize. Respondents to the news vented their fury. It's almost as if the police and politicians are deliberately trying to provoke people. If they try to do this at Xmas, things will get very nasty very quickly, said one. It is now the time to stand up against this tyranny, added another. Oh, but it's even worse than we're told. This is from the Herald Mail. What is this? Oh, it's Dateline Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Patrick Hidalgo died on the 2nd day of March in his apartment at 41 after complaining to his family of waking up in the middle of the night and gasping for breath. The Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner attributed the death of this former Obama staffer to heart disease. His family says it was COVID-19. Hidalgo isn't counted as a virus death in Florida, but he illustrates that the pandemic has claimed far more people than the official death count indicates. There's going to be a reckoning regarding the media after November the 3rd, because they truly are, Trump says, the enemy of the people. Was this fellow Hidalgo? Oh, wait. We didn't know he had a positive COVID test. Oh no, we're talking about someone else here. Nothing about a positive test for Patrick Hidalgo. You know, when a man with serious heart disease wakes up in the middle of the night, gasps for breath, and dies, one is tempted to, attribute this death to heart disease, but no, his family says it was COVID-19. Now, why would his family say that? Is it because COVID-19 is the only respectable death now? All these other deaths from heart disease, stroke, cancer, whatever, well, I mean, they are as nothing because they're not COVID. I didn't mention this earlier because I thought that it was made up. I thought it was satire. I thought it was a troll, okay? But it turns out that it's true. We have what's called a throne speech in Canada, the same as in the United Kingdom, where the government, in Britain it's the Queen, in Canada it's the Governor General who represents the Queen, announces the priorities of the government for the next legislative session. And this is a priority of the Canadian government with regard to COVID-19. Oh, again, I can hardly believe this is real. Women, and in particular low-income women, have been hardest hit by COVID-19. Have they now? This crisis has been described as a she-cession. My country is not a serious country anymore. Many women have bravely served on the front lines of this crisis in our communities or by shouldering the burden of unpaid care work at home. Unpaid care work at home, you mean like being a housewife? There were housewives before COVID-19. My government would like to get rid of housewives and force all women into the economy. We must not let the legacy of the pandemic be one of rolling back the clock on women's participation in the workforce, nor one of backtracking on the social and political gains women and allies have fought so hard to secure. The government will create an action plan for women in the economy to help more women get back into the workforce and to ensure a feminist, intersectional response to this pandemic and recovery. Yes, it's invasion of the body snatchers. That one day you wake up and the people you thought were human beings have become pod people. And they're talking about feminist, intersectional responses to a virus. And they're talking about a she-cession. Because, of course, anything that happens in the world, women suffer the most. They've actually made this claim that, of course, war affects women more than men. Oh, really? Who are the people who are dying? That would be overwhelmingly men. I'm going to go to Will Jones at Lockdown Skeptics. Sage predicts second wave will be worse than the first. Yes, of course. We're running out of time. Joe Biden said in the second debate that 200,000 more people were going to die by the end of the year. Given that the death total, inflated as it is, was at 220,000, that means that almost as many people who died the whole of this year were going to die in, 9-10 weeks? Not bloody likely. How we know immunity lasts, whatever Imperial says. Oh, no. So you got COVID and you recovered. No, it's going to come back again and again and again. It's like the Terminator. It cannot be stopped. Today, we're publishing a new piece by pathologist and contributor Dr. Claire Craig on how the data shows there's something seriously wrong with how we're counting both cases and deaths. The system for counting deaths from COVID is not working properly, and we are overcounting COVID deaths. This can be fixed easily by improving cross-checking and retesting all alleged positive PCR test results. Accurate data is a basic prerequisite for good policy choices. You would think so, but good policy choices today are based on panic, based on hysteria. We received an email from Freddie Attenborough, the author of some of the strongest pieces we've published, such as this one on the infantilization of dissent drawing our attention to a BBC article portraying the lockdown in the state of Victoria, that's in Australia, one of the most draconian in the world, as a huge success. According to the BBC, everyone's happy, and the good people of Melbourne in particular have been feeling like theirs is the best of all possible worlds. Who needs a job anyway? I never liked running a business. Money only burns a hole in your pocket. I like a man in uniform to treat me nice and rough every now and again. The tumor will probably go away if I give it time, and so on. Did you know that? I didn't know that. We must get out more. He goes on to say that the BBC is, by virtue of royal charter, is supposed to be objective, but not so much these days. And he gets into James Burnham territory. The socio-legal trajectory here is pretty clear. The political scientist Robert Michels once wrote about an iron law of oligarchy, where all complex organizations, regardless of how democratic they were when started, eventually develop into oligarchies. He was, of course, referring specifically to political parties, but for me, he also inadvertently identified a general tendency towards intensification in modernity, that is a tendency for more and more power to be dragged towards fewer and fewer people, particularly when those people see themselves as having to operate in the presence of an internal enemy. And what could be more internal than a virus? At least those commie bastards during the Cold War had the decency to stay out of our free market lungs. Now, this general tendency towards intensification and modernity, well, it's already been identified as scale. And no, we just have to get bigger and bigger and more complex. But as has been explained in the collapse of complex societies by Tainter, I believe I have his name right, that complex societies require more and more inputs just to stay in place. And eventually they get to the point where you keep increasing the inputs, but you cannot prevent dissolution. Well, what does that teach us? It teaches us that small is beautiful, but we have decided, or at least our betters have decided, that no, bigger is always beautiful. Let's go to Alex Berenson, and he has some things to say about politics as well. Because although CNN et al. Obsessively publicize every COVID death, especially those outlier cases of healthy people under 50, they don't have the same interest in suicides or homicides or overdoses. And the number of overdoses in my province of British Columbia every month dwarfs the number of COVID deaths. But COVID is being blamed for this. And of course, COVID has nothing to do with it. It is the mindless panic that was adopted that is, to a large extent, responsible for this. So Amazon's brilliant AI is able to censor real books about COVID, but it can't keep fakes of mine from being sold. Nice, says Berenson. Joe Biden had tweeted 8 hours ago, "We are the United States of America. We can beat this virus. There is no challenge we cannot meet, no enemy we cannot face, no threat we cannot conquer when we stand together." Berenson comments, "That is so true. And that is why we need a rolling series of mask, lockdown, contact tracing, school closing, and vaccine mandates that ensure we beat this flu plus day after day after day, so we can never, ever get on with life. It'll only feel like we're losing." Kate Hines had tweeted profits on Wall Street reached $27.6 billion in the first 6 months of the year, an 82% increase over the same period in 2019, and nearly equal to all of 2019's pre-tax earnings of $28.1 billion, according to the NYS New York State Comptroller. Berenson comments, "Who loves lockdowns? Who makes more money in lockdowns than anyone else? Why, the richest and biggest companies in the world, the tech giants, the mega retailers, and don't forget Wall Street. Good times. Did you have fun this spring? They did." And finally, he writes, The election is too close to call. Biden is still the favorite, but his unwillingness to deal with Hunter is just too reminiscent of the Hillary email issue. The problem for Democrats is twofold. Trump doesn't need a majority because of the map. And more importantly, Trump's personality more than anything else drives the anti-Trump vote. He's just not fit. And so any hint that his opponent is just another sleazy politician hurts. That's in that small group on undecideds far more than it would otherwise. Let's talk about the police. There's a fascinating and disturbing piece that appeared 5 days ago in American Greatness by Angelo Codevilla, who was one of the smartest men alive. He begins, Turkeys cheering the arrival of Thanksgiving would be only marginally more pathetic than the conservative luminaries on Fox News who cheer for the police as civilization's saviors. The police, the heroes, who stood aside as mobs looted and burned Minneapolis, Portland, Kenosha, Chicago, Macy's in New York, downtown Chicago, and so on, while organized, mask-wearing Antifa thugs beat whoever got in the way. Yes, the police we watch tase a woman for not wearing a mask in a stadium and arresting people for singing Christian hymns in a park. The police who don't answer calls from people who are being threatened in their homes. Those police. The conservative luminaries tell us the cops really would rather protect us. They don't want to hurt us. Yes, the police fine us and jail us on behalf of politicians who hate us. Yes, effectively, they are protecting the mobs. But that's only because they are duty-bound to obey the duly constituted authorities who also pay them. They're just doing their jobs, even if they don't like what they're doing. What should they do? Disobey orders and get fired? So let's give them more money and more power. The more we think about that, the more we realize that this attitude corrupts citizens as well as police. Let us reflect. And he talks about an incident in November 10th, 1939, where his late friend Louis Gahn answered the doorbell at his home in Mainz, Germany. A kindly policeman had come pursuant to the Reich Chancellor's order to collect the medals that Jews, like his father, had been awarded for their service in World War I. And this was one day after Kristallnacht, and Gahn wasn't there, and he ordered everyone to leave. Leave everything, come here now. They did. What happened beginning around 3 years later in Mainz and throughout the Reich, that policemen and others like him did their duty as they helped people like Mrs. Gahn and Lewis's friends do their duty by climbing into the cattle cars, taking them to their camps. No hard feelings among good Germans. Who will protect us when those who were supposed to protect us are under mounting pressure to punish us, or to stand aside as others do the punishing, or to prevent us from protecting ourselves from them, or even join them in hurting us? Do we do anybody any good by closing our eyes to the realities of policing and our corrupt regime? For us Americans now, these are practical questions. Begin by dismissing the idea that serious repression, criminalization of people for their religious and social identity, or for political opposition can't happen in America. It is happening. And it is sure to get a lot worse because the people in charge of the permanent government, the media, and corporate entities increasingly are united in making it happen. More so than just about anywhere ever, and that includes Germany in the 1930s. Germany's deep state, the bureaucracy, the police, the armed forces, the school teachers, the corporate executives, were mostly the very model of meritocrats, not ideologues, much less Nazis, nor did they define themselves by contempt or the desire to punish ordinary Germans. The Nazis were a gang of violent ideologues who took advantage of society's weaknesses to dominate those who actually made the country run. But the Nazis always had to watch their back, lest these people, Germany's aristocrats, oligarchs, etc., overthrew them. They came close. Yet the farther one went into Germany's deep state, the likelier one was to find guarded remnants of decency. Not so in America. Here, the ever more oppressive rulers, the 1% at the top, the very ones who control the levers of power, are the source of the hate. In unison, they urge their retinues to hurt us. Unlike the Nazis, these unimpressive people conquered nothing. They were co-opted onto society's commanding heights by somewhat less unworthy predecessors in a chain of negative selection. Though they claim to be morally and intellectually meritorious, They are the very model of oligarchs, and there's that word again, who rule for their own enrichment and for the pleasures of primacy. Over the decades, having sought rationales for their privileges and found none in their own performance, they settled on indicting the American people and our civilization as the root of all evil, and hence on imagining themselves the only source of judgment about what exclusions and penalties we merit. Being wholly self-regarding, their minds and hearts have no limiting principles any more than did those of the Nazis. We've already experienced that, unlike even in Nazi Germany and much like in the Soviet Union, China, etc. The farther up the ordinary citizen looks in the hierarchy of the American ruling class, the more likely one is to find all manner of corruption and enmity. Dangerous to our health and liberties as the police and judicial system of California may be, the FBI and the Department of Justice are worse. What then shall we do with and about the police? Reality imposes certain principles. First, trust them only insofar as you pay them, can hire and fire or frighten them. Otherwise, realize that they will serve whomever pays them. The justice system in Al Capone's day served the mob, even though the cops and the judges of the day were churchgoers and had been exposed to at least some moral scruples. Today's justice system consists of people who know only sticks and carrots. Second, take a lesson from those videos of the police standing aside. They didn't protect the mobs simply because they were so ordered. They did it also because they were physically frightened by the mob's use of a variety of weapons against them, as well as by the prospect of lawsuits and attacks on them and their families. In Louisville, a man who shot 2 cops in the back was charged only with reckless endangerment. Alas, the left has shown that hurting cops tends to make them your friends. Hence, if you want respect from police who you do not control, make sure you give them lively reasons to fear you. Third, police yourselves. Call it self-defense groups, neighborhood protection, vigilantes, friends, anything but militias. But the essence is the same. Rely on yourself and on people who have known each other for a long time. No infiltrators, please. United and armed to take care of themselves as they think best. Fourth, and most important, strictly police your own attitude. You are living in territory controlled by enemy tribes. You, and all like you, must assume the innocence of anyone remotely like yourself who is charged in any confrontation with those tribes and with their authorities, until proven otherwise beyond a shadow of your doubt. Take his side. In other words, you must shield others like yourself by practicing and urging jury nullification. And by the way, when the police, a fortiori, the FBI, come to talk, you don't know or remember anything, except that they answer to your enemies. Don't be a good German. This may seem like an exaggeration, but look at what has happened in America ever since the death in police custody of George Floyd. American cities have been wrecked, burned, looted on a regular basis. We're over 120 days of this in Portland, and the police stand aside. They stand aside. And even when they're arrested, oh, well, the authorities in Multnomah County in Oregon, where Portland is located, nah, we're not going to charge you with anything. What are they saying? They're saying, we're on your side. We're on the side of Antifa. We're on the side of BLM. NBC News reports in Philadelphia another night of protests after fatal police shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. This guy's a violent nutcase, but now he's another American hero. He's 27 years old. He was a nutcase. Oh, an aspiring rapper, by the way. I guess he was turning his life around. He had, what, 6 or 7 children? Yeah. Some looting was again reported Tuesday, despite pleas from the man's family for an end to any violence or looting. Other demonstrations Tuesday were described as peaceful, including one that drew as many as 500 people. Ooh, that many, huh? Philadelphia police tweeted Tuesday night that a large crowd was looting stores in the Port Richmond area of the city. Earlier in the evening, news helicopter footage showed people appearing to break in and loot a Foot Locker store and another business in that area. The city's Office of Emergency Management tweeted that police were asking residents in some districts to stay inside. Now, I suppose it's reasonable enough to stay inside on extraordinary occasions, or for instance, your city is being bombed. But when police now or civic authorities routinely say, stay in your home, stay in your home, we're talking about anarchy. And it is the first duty of any form of government to deliver order. Any government that has embraced anarchy is not fit for purpose and should be dissolved. Oh, but let's have the sob story about Walter Wallace Jr. Police responded to a call about a man armed with a knife. Police officers said that they ordered Wallace to drop the knife several times, but he continued to advance on them while holding the knife. Both officers at the scene fired, striking Wallace in the shoulder and chest. Wallace's father, Walter Wallace Sr., said that the family wants justice and for someone to be held accountable. How about Walter Wallace Jr.? Okay, so we've got to the point now where a man comes at the police with a knife, but the police are not allowed to shoot him. Perhaps they should have, as Joe Biden suggested, shot him in the legs. But it's a funny thing about people, when they are not really brought down, that crazy people often show a determination to achieve their goal of stabbing who is ever in front of them. This is from Fox News. Violent protests erupt in New York City. Portland holds vigil after Walter Wallace shooting. We're all supposed to know this fellow's name. Because why? Because he was a blight on society who got limited by the police, and quite rightly so. Dozens of protesters were arrested Tuesday night in Brooklyn after hundreds took to the street. There were reports of damage to property in the downtown area. Didn't see that coming. Due to protest activity in downtown Brooklyn, expect vehicular traffic and a large presence of emergency personnel in the area. Consider alternate routes and allow for additional travel time, the New York Police Department wrote on Twitter. Authorities said police vehicles were damaged during the arrest. Damaged, it's a rather weak sentence, passive sentence. Trash cans, including an American flag, were also set on fire, according to videos posted on social media. Burn the precinct to the ground. Every city, every town, the group reportedly shouted. That does not really sound like a peaceful protest to me. Does that sound like a peaceful protest to you? Steve Keeley of Fox 29, security took us to get a look inside the Walmart. He says looters broke in through the roof and broke the water pipes, which have now completely flooded the entire store, end to end and front to back, and it is still being looted out the back and side doors. Let's go to the chat. Hauper says the cops who handle these violent situations are apparently voiceless. Why'd his mom call the police, says Chogokin 666. That is an excellent point, because if the police are simply looking for any excuse to limit every black man they see, including apparently, a black man in a $3,000 suit, Joe Biden said a black man earning $300,000 a year, then obviously it was very foolish of the martyr's mother to call the police. I mean, doesn't she know about what King James said about every black man being hunted down from the moment that he leaves his home? Prussian Juncker says a jogger proposed marriage to another jogger. Last as there are other joggers in the background breaking stuff last night. That means they think this is normative. It is. It has become normative. Philip Daniel says, well, I'm glad I'm not working as a judicial clerk in Philly right now. Let's see. why would this stop? I suppose it's only going to stop if the police stop arresting black men, because some of these outbreaks of terror begin simply with arrests. So I guess the Steve Saylor jokes, the new rule is that black people can only be arrested if they agree to be arrested. And why would they agree to be arrested? Because the cops are going to kill them, or that's what they say. So no. Of course, there's some people who believe that if Joe Biden is elected next Tuesday, then all this will come to an end, because Joe Biden is going to usher in a new age. The state is going to wither away. Perhaps that's an unexpected benefit of the Green Revolution. Okay, what else do we have here? DeBreas is in the house. Hello, hello, you awesome people. Hello, hello to you as well. Yes, that was my subject heading for this part of the evening's talk. PC Plod, hello, hello, hello. What's all this then? It used to be Dixon and Doc Green, that the police was a much loved, comforting figure in English society, and now the police are largely considered to be useless or worse, to be enemies of ordinary people. Brandon Smith says, if there's a metric, then it'll no doubt be in even worse shape in 2050. Brandon Smith, 2020, when viewed from the 90s, seems like an impossible parallel universe. The further from the 1940s we travel, the more important that decade becomes, apparently. Yeah, because of the Great Crusade against Nazis, when Antifa triumphed. I've been rereading Evelyn Waugh's book about the Second World War, Sword of Honor, and I'm really struck, particularly in the last volume of this trilogy, this word anti-fascist. You keep hearing it, anti-fascist. And what he's describing is communist infiltration of the British Army and of British society generally. The long march through the institutions. Well, I guess the long march is pretty much completed. Is it not? I discovered an excellent site called bigtrial.net. And it's reported by a fellow called Ralph Cipriano. Amid rioting, Inky mythologizes Walter Wallace Jr. as family man. Before he was shot to death Monday by police, a knife-wielding Walter Wallace Jr. had at least 3 standing protection from abuse orders filed against him by his mother and the mother of his children. On March 3rd, Wallace was arrested for stabbing the mother of his children, Big Trial has previously reported. According to court records, the cops arrested Wallace in March after he told the mother of his children, "I'll shoot you and that house up." But she decided against pressing domestic abuse charges, so District Attorney Larry Krasner charged Wallace with only making terroristic threats. He was turned loose after he put down a $1,000 deposit on $10,000 bail. His lengthy rap sheet includes a 2019 arrest for kicking the windows and door panels of a police vehicle. In 2016, during a robbery, Wallace allegedly grabbed a woman by the neck and, according to the victim, held a gun to her head. In 2013, he violated a protection order filed by his mother by throwing water in her face, punching her in the face, and threatening to shoot her. Wallace is the same guy the Philadelphia Inquirer mythologized today as a family man who had many mental health crises and encounters with police, and it worked. Wallace was a mentally ill career criminal with some 18 arrests, an amateur rapper seen on video cavorting with guns that, as a convicted felon, he was barred from possessing while rapping about N-words and bitches. And now, thanks to the Inquirer, Wallace has been elevated in death to becoming an issue in the final days of the presidential campaign. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris announced yesterday that they reacted with shock and grief at the emotional weight of learning about another Black life in America lost. we have been harangued for what, 10 or 15 years now, both in Canada and the United States, in an effort paid for, big surprise, by the pharmaceutical industry, that we need to end the stigma against mental illness. Walter Wallace Jr. is one of the many examples of why we need, for our own security, to have a stigma against mental illness, because people suffering from mental illness are far more violent than people who don't. They are far more likely to hurt and kill people than people who are not mentally ill. While a squad of Inquirer's social justice reporters were promoting a false narrative about a career criminal being a family man, the Inkies, columnists of color, were busy stoking racial tensions during 2 days of rioting by elevating Wallace to the ranks of black martyrdom. Walter Wallace Jr. would not have been subjected to a barrage of bullets endangering bystanders and family if he were a white man in a white community, wrote Solomon Jones. Solomon Jones. That's almost as good as the Emperor Jones. Had Wallace's skin color been different, would the police response have been the same? Asked Janice Armstrong. It's hard to say, but I know this. Walter Wallace Jr.'s Black Life mattered. Cops demonstrate every day, wrote Inky columnist Helen Ubinis, that they are incapable of seeing white men and women as a threat and incapable of treating black men and women as anything but. Really now? Okay. While the Inky was fanning the flames of racial unrest, Michael Cord, a civil rights attorney and longtime supporter who served on D.A. Krasner's transition team, was doing his bit to further incite tensions. Cord posted a message on social media to Dear, Walter, and Brianna, and George, and literally thousands of others. In the post, Cord proposed one solution to the problem of police-involved shootings, an illustration of a presumably dead pig with angels' wings. Isn't that sweet? More from Ralph Cipriano at bigtrial.net. We interrupt the rioting, looting, and political pandering over the fatal police shooting yesterday of Walter Wallace Jr., a 27-year-old black man armed with a knife, to make an important announcement. The city of Philadelphia just hit 400 murders. Barry Torrance, a 44-year-old black man, was found shot in the head yesterday by his aunt in the 4800 block of Westminster Avenue in funky West Philly. Ironically, that crime scene was just 4 blocks away from where the rioting and looting erupted on 52nd Street over the shooting of Wallace Jr. Torrance, who subsequently died of his wounds, became Philly's 400th homicide this year. By comparison, as of October the 12th, New York City, with more than 5 times the population of Philadelphia, had only 362 murders. A conservative estimate of Philly's homicides this year is that at least 90% of the victims are black, as are the victims whose deaths have been classified as suspicious. But apparently, when it comes to our toxic brand of racial politics, those hundreds of black lives don't matter. So the demonstrators who marched on the police station at 55th and Pine weren't chanting "Say His Name" about Barry Torrance, official homicide victim number 400. No, they were chanting about Walter Wallace Jr., a career criminal with 18 prior arrests, including 5 assaults on cops and domestic abuse cases as recent as this past March, when he stabbed his 25-year-old girlfriend. The district attorney of Philadelphia is a fellow called Larry Krasner. And it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy with foreign money and foreign power. Let's see. Elected to the position in 2017, this is from Wikipedia, Krasner campaigned on a platform to reform elements of the criminal justice system, including to reduce incarceration. During his tenure, he sought to spearhead criminal justice reform by ending bail payments for low-level offenders, etc., etc., etc. Prior to his government service, he had a 30-year career as a criminal defense and civil rights attorney and public defender. So, does the name George Soros appear anywhere here? Indeed it does. Indeed it does. Shortly before the candidacy announcement, John McNesby, president of Lodge 5 of the Philadelphia Fraternal Order of Police, derided Krasner's eventually successful run as hilarious. He opposed Krasner's promise to refuse to prosecute defendants whose detainments were illegally performed so arresting officers could earn overtime pay. Krasner received no major newspaper endorsements. Less than 3 weeks before the primary, a political action committee supporting Krasner's campaign received a $1.45 contribution from billionaire George Soros. How about that? So what's going on in Larry Krasner's office? Well, one of his employees, that is to say his gun violence counselor, shot and killed a male prostitute that he had hired for $500. And Cipriano is pretty much the only person reporting on that. Pretty interesting story, don't you think? It happened shortly before 10 a.m. at the intersection of 31st and Lehigh Streets, adjacent to Mount Peace Cemetery. At a time when most employees at the DA's office are expected to be at work, Douglas told police he shot and killed Vernon Harris, who he had met on Instagram, and agreed to a sexual encounter in exchange for money. Yeah, apparently this trick went bad, as tricks so often do. It's day 2 of the local news media blackout over the latest scandal in the Philly DA's office involving a gun violence counselor who shot and killed a male prostitute. And who's trying to expose the ongoing cover-up? U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain went on Twitter today to rip DA Larry Krasner, your Philly DA's office, where Krasner hires an employee who allegedly ends up shooting and killing a man. You can't even make this stuff up. The destruction that Krasner has wrought on that office is a tragedy. McSwain subsequently went on Twitter again to rip the Philadelphia Inquirer, which, as usual, was sleeping through another news cycle involving possible bad publicity for their favorite progressive DA. So where's the Philly Inquirer article on this? Everyone knows that the Inquirer bends over backwards to protect Krasner, but this is a little too obvious, even for them. Gabriel Escobar, editor and vice president of the Inquirer, did not respond to an email and questions posed on Twitter as to why the Inquirer continues to cover up for Larry Krasner. Meanwhile, Krasner, along with his alleged spokesperson, Jane Rowe, were stonewalling as usual, refusing to comment. Something else from Paul Joseph Watson. People are noting the irony of a Chick-fil-A in Philadelphia being looted by rioters just months after the company's CEO, Dan Cathy, shined a black rapper's shoes. This is not meant metaphorically. It happened literally. Chick-fil-A CEO Dan Cathy literally shined a black rapper's shoes in a pro-Black Lives Matter PR stunt. After targeting a local Walmart and Foot Locker, looters turned their attention to Chick-fil-A, smashing into and damaging a brand of the food chain. The chicken there that they're going to find is not going to be cooked, right? You don't want to eat raw chicken. According to reporter Julio Rosas, who has covered numerous BLM riots, he hasn't seen anything like this on this scale since Minneapolis back in May. 30 officers were injured on the first night of the riots, with one female sergeant being run over by a truck driven by BLM rioters. The sight of criminals taking advantage of a BLM demonstration to smash up Chick-fil-A is deliciously ironic, given the bizarre behavior of the company's CEO back in June. And I'm reminded, if you go to Matt Walsh's blog on Twitter, @Matt Walsh blog, you can find video of a bemused rapper staring at a bald white guy in a suit as he shines his shoes. During a discussion about repentance and shame at Passion City Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Dan Cathy got up to shine the shoes of a black rapper called Lecrae while apologizing profusely. I invite folks to put some words to action here, Cathy said, as he shined the shoes. And if we need to find somebody that needs to have their shoes shined, we need to just go right on over and shine their shoes. That sounds like something a crazy person would say. How do you get to be the CEO of a major company and be crazy like that? Or is it just Is it just BLM that drives people crazy? And Steve Saylor weighs in on the topic in Takis Mag on the subject of violent victimization, with the conventional wisdom increasingly prejudiced and extremist on the question of who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. How much longer can we expect the federal government to collect and publish objective crime statistics by race? After all, nothing undermines the narrative more than official numbers about who are the real victims. Wouldn't a Biden administration make it harder for citizens to access data on crimes committed by blacks versus whites? This may sound paranoid, but there is precedent, and the Bush administration made it very difficult, much more difficult to get a hold of this information. Let's see. Yes, he talks about this year's anti-police and anti-white propaganda, with Philadelphia now being looted to defend the black man's inalienable right to resist arrest. It might be useful to clue the public into these official numbers. People on the left assume that if the science ever reported anything politically incorrect, the respective media would have already informed them of that fact. And people on the right assume that all social science studies support the left because that's what the left keeps telling them. I pointed out recently that the other main set of annual crime data, the FBI's uniform crime reporting from local law enforcement, shows that the old stereotype of blacks being extraordinarily homicide prone is not only true, but getting worse. The per capita ratio of known black murder offenders to non-black murder offenders of all other races grew from 7.9 in 2018 to 8.2 in 2019, an even larger imbalance than male versus female killers. And this ratio is likely to be even more atrocious in 2020 due to all the black shootings ever since the media declared the racial reckoning in late May. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. I'm not the only person to make this. They say Black Lives Matter. What about all the black people who are killed almost exclusively by other blacks? How about doing something about that? Well, the answer comes back that it's none of Whitey's business. That's the typical response. Our streets, as they like to say. Oh, I want to talk about aposematism, because I see a lot of this stuff, and I don't pay attention to it because I guess I've become desensitized to it. Someone calling herself Bridget Fox00 tweeted, "Boo, I'm back." And F Trump 2020. I guess that's just pro forma de rigueur. There are 3 pictures of her, and she has spent a lot of time on her makeup and hair, and I suspect that filters have been used. But she has a large gold, or at least gold color, ring, a rather ornate one, through her septum. Through her septum. If you do a Google image search for septum, this is what you find. Picture after picture of women who have put rings through their septums. So many empowered young women with rings through their septums, a powerful signifier. I want to be treated as a beast of burden. You know, like an ox. Now, what is aposematism? It's a word that biologists use, and I'm going to read from Wikipedia. Aposematism is the advertising by an animal to potential predators that is not worth attacking or eating. This unprofitability may consist of any defenses which make the prey difficult to kill and eat, such as toxicity, venom, foul taste or smell, sharp spines, or aggressive nature. Aposematism always involves advertising signals, which may take the form of conspicuous coloration, sounds, odors, or other perceivable characteristics. Aposematic signals are beneficial for both predator and prey, since both avoid potential harm. I would say that, as aposematic signals are beneficial for both men and women. For instance, if women see a man who is covered in tattoos, say of a violent nature, and is wearing a T-shirt, which expresses this man's, desire of what he'd like to do to the world, nothing nice, probably good to stay away. I'm reminded of this English celebrity Mylene Klass, who's constantly in the Daily Mail, and she was in some group called Hearsay, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, one of these manufactured groups. And we're supposed to believe that she is a classical pianist of some distinction. She put out a video, I don't know, what, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? And it was a very simple piece by Eric Satie. We didn't once see her fingers on the keyboard. I suppose she's exotic because she's half German and half Thai. But she married her bodyguard. I don't know, doesn't sound wise to me. An Irishman who had been in trouble with the law, I believe heroin addict. He had an enormous tattoo on his back that said, "Only God can judge me." Now, there's aposematism. Run as fast as you can, because people who express sentiments such as "only God can judge me" are frequently judged by people other than God, typically the courts. But I'm going to talk about female aposematism, that the ring through the septum is a signifier. Now, it serves an aposematic purpose in that it is a warning to men. But it also signifies something else, which is I will put out on the first date or hookup or whatever you want to call it. And there are a great many of these symbols, and I'm going to name some of them. Piercings are one, particularly piercings in places where you're thinking, no, I don't want a piercing there, or who would want a piercing there? And tattoos, particularly things like sleeve tattoos, asymmetric hair, particularly that is colored with colors that are not of nature. Twerking would be another one. Too tight clothing, leading to muffin tops and the like. Now you would think, why would a woman uglifying herself in this way be sexually powerful? Well, Marshall McLuhan explained this when he said that men do make passes at women who wear glasses. And of course, problem glasses is another one of these sexual signifiers. That making yourself uglier in this way makes you more approachable to men. Because it's famously noted that beautiful women are often lonely because men are afraid of them. These women who use this aposematic signals, men are not afraid of them because they're advertising their availability. As I mentioned before, this aposematism is very valuable for men because these women are, the message is stay away. This woman is too dangerous. And it once was the case that one would have to get to know a woman reasonably well before learning that this woman was crazy. But now it is made easier for us. Not that long ago, just about 3 months ago when I was living in Victoria, I saw a woman wearing something on her nose, which it wasn't just a piercing through the septum, it was a kind of metal device, which was like encompassing the lower part of the nose and the septum. That there's kind of an arms race going on here. I mean, it used to be that things like tramp stamps and pierced navel were thought to be outrageous. Well, the tramp stamp has been ubiquitous for quite some time, and even fairly normal women now have pierced navels. So how far can you go Well, I suppose another signifier would be the shaved head as well, or giving yourself stubble on the head and then dyeing that pink or blue. The whole point is to. Oh yes, I missed out one. The doll face. This is Instagram has really made this quite popular, where women use makeup in a way to make themselves look literally inhuman, to look like dolls. What else do we have here? Model Emily Ratajkowski. This woman is famous for one thing, which is getting her kit off. She is constantly in the Daily Mail. She has a very handsome body indeed, but apparently she has a social conscience. Apparently she's writing a book called My Body. Presumably it will be filled with many of the naked or semi-naked pictures of her that have appeared over the years. Oh, the male gaze. Oh, you're going to take your clothes off with that body, but men aren't supposed to look at you or come to any conclusions about you. Well, Emily is expecting. She has announced her pregnancy with a personal essay exploring questions of her unborn child's gender and identity. We won't know the gender until our child is 18, and then they'll let us know then. Could be some washroom problems, sports team problems, and the like, many other problems. Again, this woman is announcing her madness to the world, and she expects to be congratulated for it. Richard Hanania tweets, the article published online by Vogue on Monday is accompanied by a short film directed by, wait for it, Lena Dunham. And Lena Dunham has been subverting our expectations of beauty for the longest time. And the fatter she gets, the more attractive she supposedly is. That's what we're told. In any event, Steve Saylor pointed out that it seems as these women whose appeal is based on their gender exclusivity are the ones talking against gender exclusivity. Oh, this is from Breitbart, and it's a very disturbing story. 13-year-old gender creative boy, gender is over, by Dr. Susan Berry. Pink News tweeted Tuesday a video of CJ Duran, a 13-year-old California boy who claims to be gender creative and states gender is over. Yeah, I'm not really interested in what a 13-year-old has to say about anything, actually. But here we are. Duran describes himself as having a gender identity that is male, but a gender expression that is female. To me, gender is over. We don't really need it. It's kind of unnecessary. And then this article reminded me of something that I had seen at the time, and it still rather takes my breath away. At age 11, Duran served as Grand Marshal of the Orange County Alphabet Pride Parade, an experience he describes as magical and powerful. Now, there's a long-standing and obviously disgusting and completely untrue claim that homosexuals are particularly interested in adolescent boys, boys beneath the age of consent. Now, obviously, this is absolutely untrue. It's a despicable statement, and anyone who claims that should be corrected, perhaps legally. I would have thought, however, that the idea of an 11-year-old boy in drag and makeup as the Grand Marshal of the Orange County Alphabet People Pride Parade would be something that gay leaders, being the responsible people that we know them to be, would never allow to happen. But it turns out this is not the only case. Drag kids are a thing. CBC devoted a whole series to them and a whole series of articles to them. Everyone loves drag kids. Desmond is amazing. Appeared, again at the age of 11 or something, dancing at a gay club as the patrons were throwing banknotes at him. How did this happen? How was this allowed to happen? I guess that will remain a mystery. One of the mysteries of the ages. And on that bombshell, I'm going to wrap up today's show after a final look at the chat. Oh dear, I've become rather strangely colored again. I'm going to have to work on this. But okay. Let's see. MCT says there is a time for departure even when there's no certain place to go. KMG, most entertaining show. Happy evening to all. Good night. Why, thank you. Thank you. Mary Crow says this stuff has got to stop, but I don't think it will till Christ returns. Oh, there's a very apocalyptic note. Wolf Barney says, watching old movies, the women are feminine, not fat and beautiful compared to today's woke women. Yeah, it's funny how that works because, of course, people in the 90s were complaining about this and then going, saying, well, look at the 80s or look at the 70s, and you can go back. That doesn't mean there's nothing new under the sun. It just gives you an idea of how continuously decadent we have become. YT, ha ha ha, that chick is totally empty. Let me read that essay. I can't effing wait. Well, you see, I'm programmed to look at a woman like Emily Polish name and like her because of the way that she looks. But she has decided to go out of her way to alienate me and many other men. Brandon Smith points to the animalization of the sacred feminine, purely satanic, unbeknownst to them. Metatron, the tramp stamps. I first saw tramp stamps. I was in this restaurant in downtown Vancouver, Dunsmuir Street, I think Seymour. And the waitresses were very attractive, and they all seemed to be blonde, and they had good figures and good faces. And they were wearing these kind of pants that cut off around the knee in black, and these black blouses which went to, just the belt line or above, so that every time they bent over to deliver food, you saw a great deal of their back. And so one of these women did so, and I saw this enormous tattoo, like an eagle with spread wings. And then this other blonde woman did the same, and I saw another such tattoo in the small of the back. And I thought, what's going on here? And it was, 3, 4, 5 years later that I was first introduced to this term tramp stamp. And I thought, why wasn't I told this earlier? Because this is perfect. How rarely do you come across a coinage as good as that? Prussian Juncker 1 says, always be avoiding. Yes, that is my advice, and I believe it is good advice. I will be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I would appreciate it if you'd click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so already. And tomorrow is Theater Thursday, and I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite movies, which is shot in 1963 by Robert Wise, who you might know from The Sound of Music and West Side Story and many other very popular movies. It is shot widescreen in black and white, and the compositions are absolutely gorgeous. I like this word chiaroscuro. Well, this is one of the great chiaroscuro movies ever made. It stars Julie Harris, who is, I guess, the epitome of highly strung. Also, the beautiful English actress Claire Bloom as well. And on the Book Club Friday, a book suitable for Halloween, I guess. It's by Evelyn Waugh. It's called The Loved One, and it is about funeral practices, or it's one of those Mitford sisters called it. What was it? The American Way of Death. It's a question of, what is a funeral for? Is a funeral for the benefit of the person who has died, or is the funeral a benefit, supposedly a benefit to the survivors? And Waugh had very strong views on that. If you'd like to donate to this live stream, very much appreciated, especially at this time. My PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, donations can be sent directly via interact@kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I will leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to form a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.